Hey guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to continue on with our read-along of Urha. Let's jump right into it. Chapter 80. This venerable one's ex-wife is here. Ooh, drama alert. Okay. The one who had come was the modest gentleman who shared the same residence with Moran back at the Peach Blossom Springs, Ye Wangxi. Today, he had come donned in the heron mantle with blue underlinings and silver silk threads of the Rufeng sect. His hair fastened with a royal blue ribbon, and adorned around his waist was a silver fragrance pouch embroidered of a rare beast with a pearl in its mouth. Perhaps it was because the armor was removed, so while the strong aura of valiance still rested between his brows, there were traces of an elegant air. Xuanyuan Pavilion's grand manager approached in greeting, his eyes lowered and his head inclined. Ye Shanjun. Ye Wangxi nodded and said, I've come in my sworn father's name to bid for an item. Will the Grand Master please lead me up to the pavilion? The pavilion master has already known Xianjun was coming, and a booth was already reserved for the Rufeng sect. I will lead my lord up straight away. Ye Wangxi then led the 10-something disciples of the Rufeng sect upstairs, leaving behind an entire hall of hooded crowd, whispering to themselves. Have people of Rufeng also come today? Who's that Xianjun? How come we've never seen him before? Obviously, there's a reason why none of you have seen him before, Moran thought, but couldn't help but be curious too, and watched as Ye Wangxi's back disappeared around the corner before he turned to Chua Ning. Shizun, you've stayed with the Rufeng sect before. Do you know this Ye Xianjun? No. Chua Ning knitted his brows slightly, but for some reason he looks rather familiar. He paused a bit, closed his eyes to think, but still shook his head. I don't recall anything. Moran scratched his head. This Ye Xianjun stayed in the same residence as me back at the Peach Blossom Springs. His ability isn't bad. Now that he's come on behalf of the Rufeng sect to bid for things, I imagine his status within the sect can't be too low either. But Shizun actually doesn't know him? There are 72 city fortresses within the Rufeng sect. Personnel are spread far and wide. I don't like to run around, and I'm too lazy to pry into internal affairs, so it's not strange that I don't know him. The two were just conversing when the candlelight within the booth reserved for the Rufeng sect was lit up in a bright yellow glow. No doubt it was Ye Wangxi and company who had already entered and settled in their seats. The highest level of this Xuanyuan pavilion was especially reserved for the great sects, so normally it was very seldom used. Thus, the crowd looked up to see, thinking it a rather rare event. Now that the Rufeng sect had joined, everyone's anticipation for this auction instantly increased by a few notches. After a pot of tea time, the white jaded lotus platform in the center suddenly brightened immensely, and from the ceiling of Xuanyuan Pavilion, a vibrant and brilliant red satin roll was dropped. A dainty young girl of 11 or 12 in bare feet donned in a snow-white shark muslin caught the satin and spun and landed lightly and delicately onto the ice-cold, white jaded lotus platform. Thank you for waiting, honored Xianjuns. I am the second pavilion master in command. That clever and handsome little girl smiled demurely. Honored Xianjuns have come from all over the 4 seas in praise of our name. Naturally, the Xuanyuan Pavilion will, as always, return our gratitude with the rarest and best of items to show for everyone. Moran's hearing was excellent, and heard down below there were people griping. The second pavilion master of Xuanyuan Pavilion is actually an immature underage little girl? Ayo, buddy, you really haven't seen much. Do you know how old this little girl is? 10? 15? She can't be more than 20. Heh, stunned, are you? She's over 100 now. You should call her Great Granny, not little girl. What? Liu Shong, you're pulling my leg here, right? How can that little thing be 100? This is Gu Yue Ye, the #1 medicine sect of the world. How is anything impossible? It's just a medicine of everlasting youth. Whoa! This must have been the first time that man who was wowing in awe had come, and after that conversation, he excitedly stretched out his neck, his hands clutching the wallet pouch on his person, obviously impatient to see just what kind of miraculous medicine and sacred tools Xuanyuan Pavilion would bring out for the auction. The second pavilion master didn't disappoint either, and with the snap of her fingers, a gap cracked open at the center of the stone lotus, and a small podium in the shape of a bulb slowly rose up. Upon it rested 5 silver brocade boxes the size of a palm, and each box was opened wide generously, revealing the medicinal pills with the shine of pearls. Immediately, someone called out with a laugh, "Isn't that the pill of obsessive affection? What's so rare about that?" "It is indeed, but even if the first one out isn't going to be some rare treasure, you can't just bring some love pills out to make up the numbers." Oh wait, no. Sorry, that's someone else talking. That's not the pavilion master, sorry. "It is indeed, but even if the first one out isn't going to be some rare treasure, you can't just bring out some love pills to make up the numbers." The second pavilion master heard the people's gripes, but wasn't irritated in the least, and instead she smiled with crescent eyes, speaking loudly and clearly. "Everyone certainly has good eyes. This is indeed the pill of obsessive affection, but everyone knows that while these pills are hard to refine, they aren't anything toxic. Our Xuanyuan pavilion will naturally never bring any ordinary items out to placate our customers." As she spoke, she took one of the brocade boxes and presented it in her hand, clack, and closed the box. Although the crowd was seated at various distances, there was a spiritual mirror prepared in front of each individual that could show the treasure's details without fault. Only then did everyone notice the snake markings on the cover of the box. "Hanlin the Sage?" Someone sucked in a breath. The second pavilion master smiled. "That's right. These 5 pills of obsessive affection. Each box has come from the refinery kiln of the elder of my sect, Hanlin the Sage. Regular pill of obsessive affection can confound the heart and have the user become obsessed with oneself, but the effect only lasts for half a year, and it's very easy to produce an antidote for it. But these 5 pills..." Her delicate, tender fingertips held the brocade box and explained solemnly, "These can guarantee for 10 years without any antidote to cure." "What? My heavens, how is that possible? Hanlin the Sage really is too frightening." The second pavilion master waited until the commotion died down somewhat before she smiled again. "In order to differentiate from ordinary pills of obsessive affection, Hanlin the Sage has named these love pills. With the purchase of only one of these pills, dissolve it in water and convince the other party to drink it. In the span of 10 years, we guarantee the other party will remain obsessed with you without any wavering." A female cultivator asked with a high voice down below, "Is there really no cure for it after taking the pill? If in 10 years I don't like him anymore, wouldn't he still harass me?" The crowd started chuckling and laughing, and the second pavilion master also smiled politely. "My lady has pointed out a truth, which is why the Xuanyuan Pavilion will take this chance to remind everyone that the love pill has no cure in the world, and until the 10 years is up, there is nothing that can break the bond. If it isn't a case of unanswered tormented love, we recommend not to feed the other party the pill." With that conclusion, the bidding started, and the price started rising. Moran saw that the ones screaming to fight the prices were mostly female cultivators, and he subconsciously clicked his tongue. "This is really too scary." Indeed, to earn sentiments thus truly is too tasteless. Having heard Chuanning's response, Moran turned his head around and glanced at him, smiling. "Shizun, you'll have to watch out. You're so good-looking, who knows if there are women cultivators from Shisheng Peak here who'd buy this and secretly drop this in your water to have you fall in love with them. You're a married man. There's no way you can be affectionate with another. ... This man said this to ridicule him, and Chuaning wanted to be angry. But this was the first time in his life that he heard Moran call him good-looking, so he couldn't find it in himself to be angry. His lips pressed into a cool and distant straight line, turning his head away, not wanting to acknowledge him. "But if the other party really does take the pill, they must fall tragically in love, huh?" Moran mumbled, and seeing how fast those 5 boxes of pills were purchased, he sighed and shook his head. "How sad." Chuaning stared at that snow-white wall for a moment, then replied calmly, "If they truly love the other, how could they actually have the heart to use a pill like that? You're still young. There are some things you don't understand." "Still young?" Moran twisted around, his dimples deepening with his smile. "I don't understand, but Shizun does? Is Shizun going to tell me about Shizun's wife?" "Get the hell out." "Ha ha ha ha." In between playing around, the second item had been presented on the platform. "Tapir fragrant stew," the second pavilion master introduced crisply. "Also from the kiln of Hanlin the Sage. This is the newest medicinal dew refined by Hanlin. The first generation of disciples of Gu Yueye have tried it, and it works magic. Cultivator A was somewhat learned. Typing fragrance do? Cultivator B was a little hungry. Tappa's fragrance do? Cultivator C was perverted. Tapping fragrance do? Chuaning gave it a ponder and raised his trembling lashes, gazing over to those 5 porcelain bottles. Tapir fragrance do? From the dream-consuming tapir? The second pavilion master didn't have the intention to lose people's interest, and seeing how the crowd was confused, she immediately explained with a smile. The reason it's called the tapir fragrance dew is because the formula has the claw blood of dream tapirs. With only a drop in a cup of tea, the effect will last for 7 days, and every night is guaranteed a good dream. This may not mean much to ordinary cultivators, but with the influence of cultivation methods and spells, some Xianjun experiences relentless nightmares and trouble with peaceful slumber. If the problem persists, it can lead to qi deviation, which is why this tapir fragrance dew is the utmost best choice. After Chuaning heard, he was suddenly reminded of that realistic dream he had, and while it wasn't a nightmare, it did indeed make him feel rather unsettled. The second pavilion master was still pushing her medicine with all she had. Besides that, the tapir fragrance dew also has the ability to manage spiritual cultivation and aid in manage spiritual energy and aid in cultivation. Chuaning was still deep in thought, untouched by it. If there are any children training at home, the tapir fragrance dew is also extremely beneficial for them. Hanlin the sage had the foresight that there might be elders and teachers purchasing for young trainees, and specially made the 5 bottles of tapir fragrance dews into 5 different flavors. The red bottle is lychee flavor, the yellow bottle is orange flavor, the white bottle is milk candy flavor, the purple bottle is grape flavor, and the black bottle is mulberry flavor. Also, with but 1 sip, the taste will remain on the lips and tongue for an entire day. Quite lovely. Just as she finished, a silver stick was dropped from the dignitary seat from the 2nd floor. Since the 2nd and 3rd floors were much farther away and it was inconvenient to yell to bid for prices, they would write their price on a silver stick before tossing it down. Those silver sticks were cast with a spell and would float to the pavilion master without fault. The 2nd pavilion master caught the stick that came drifting and gave it a glance. ... Right at the same time, within the dignitary booth, Chuaning casually laid down the brush he had just used and leisurely drank tea. Moran watched from the side, and his lips couldn't help but twitch. The voice of the 2nd pavilion master rang from below. From the Tian dignitary seat of the 2nd floor, 500,000 gold. Is anyone going to bid higher? The moment the words were out, the crowd started chattering. This tapir fragrance dew might be good, but it obviously wasn't as popular as the love pill earlier. 5 boxes of love pills went for 300,000 gold altogether, so asking for 500,000 gold for these 5 bottles of dew was already considerably high. Probably be the parents of some little gongzi who's buying, someone grumbled. Must be for some rich little gongzi's training. There were cultivators in the crowd who had suffered enough of qi deviation and hardened themselves. I'll take all 5. I bid for 550,000 gold. The tapir fragrance dew. The price now is 550,000. Is there anyone? Before the 2nd pavilion master even finished, another silver stick came erratically floating down the air, again tossed from the Tian dignitary seat on the 2nd floor. She glanced at it and her eyes widened unwittingly. I apologize, everyone. I understood it incorrectly the first time, so I will rectify my mistake now. Earlier, when the customer from the 2nd floor had meant was, he would be paying 500,000 per bottle, for a total of 2,500,000. Only a fool would fight Chuaning at that price point. As Moran watched those 5 bottles of tapir fragrance dews being delivered into the room, he felt his entire person feeling bad. Chuaning spent 2,500,000 on sweets? Sensing Moran's incredulous look, Chuaning asked indifferently, What is it? Nothing. I just didn't think Shizun would like something like this. Why would I like children's things? Chuaning replied calmly. I bought it for Sha Suni. ... What an act. Moran's brows twitched. Let's see how much longer you can keep this up. The auctioned items continued to be presented one by one, and while everything afterwards were also unique spiritual medicine and treasures, they held no value for both Moran and Chuaning. The two sipped on tea as they waited for the holy weapon Guilai to appear. Moran leaned by the window. his black shirt wrapped tightly around his thin waist, making his shoulders look broader and his legs longer. He glanced down at the lively event down below, then looked up to gaze at the reserved Rufeng booth upstairs. By the way, Shizun, how did Uncle settle the affair at the Peach Blossom Springs? You never told me the details. It's not really settled. This affair can't get bigger than it is lest we alert the enemy. Even though the sect leader knew the truth, he couldn't make a big deal of it. But he did end things completely with the Feather Tribe and brought both Shimei and Xuanmeng back to Sisheng Peak. The fight was severe at the time, and the disciples of several sects all saw. Some thought the Peach Blossom Springs weren't reliable and had already left. I imagine this Ye Wangxi is the same. Chuaning finished an orange osmanthus cake and reached for a second one. The sect leader told the outside world that you caused trouble and currently shut in Sisheng Peak in reflection, so this could hide your tracks for a while at least. Moran scratched his head. Sounds like quite the mess. I really troubled Uncle. Just as he was grumbling, the pavilion master of the Xuanyuan Pavilion, standing upon the nine-petaled lotus platform, suddenly used an amplification spell to clear her throat, and the sonorous and pleasant voice instantly echoed throughout every nook and cranny. The next auction number is a rare treasure of the highest grade, extremely hard to come by, and is considered within the top 10 in our auction guide of the past 3 years. With only those words, silence fell. After a moment, the crowd was like splashing a spoon of clear water into a pot of boiling oil, and instantly everything exploded. Almost everyone's eyes were glinting, and they whispered excitedly to each other. To be able to rank in the top 10 among the items auctioned off at Xuanyuan Pavilion in the past 3 years, just what grade of a treasure could this be? For something like this, never mind buying, to a lot of people, a simple glance of such a thing with their own eyes was already an extremely good luck. The buyers were becoming more and more excited, and the air was so tense it was almost tangible. The people down below were stretching their necks to look, and those in the booths also lifted the blinds. All eyes were on the Lotus platform. Moran wondered in a soft voice, "Is it the holy weapon Guilai?" Chuaning didn't speak. Along with the gap at the center of the platform cracking open once more, the clear voice of the second pavilion master of Xuanyuan Pavilion echoed. "Presenting the next treasured item, the butterfly-boned beauty feast." What? Moran was stunned, his hands gripping the windowsill. It's not the holy weapon? Chuaning hadn't expected this either, and he rose to his feet abruptly, coming to Moran's side, looking down the building with him. From within the center of the Lotus platform slowly rose a stone divan, and crisscrossing upon the divan were 8 iron imprisonment chains as thick as arms, locking a living creature that was struggling unceasingly. However, that living creature was completely covered by a wool blanket, and it was hard to see what it was underneath with a first look. But that didn't affect the boiling excitement in the least. The butterfly-boned beauty feast, no matter its class or appearance, was already in itself a renowned name in the world. Legend said during the Hongmeng period in history, before the heavens and the earth were separated, the demon clans and the human clans both lived upon the cultivation continent. At the time, there was a branch of demons called the Butterfly-Boned Clan. Their martial might was weak, but their bodies contained an immense amount of spiritual energy. To consume the blood and flesh of the Butterfly-Boned Clan, or to engage in intercourse with them, could both greatly enhance a human's cultivation. Those without a spiritual foundation could instantly have one form, and those who did have one could enter Zhongshi level directly. It was precisely because of this that during the beginning of world chaos, they suffered the tragedy of clan extermination. They were either captured to be bed slaves, or they were directly killed for their flesh and blood to be devoured. Presently, the real Butterfly-Boned Clan had long since been eradicated from the world, but among the vastness of people, there would still be descendants in whose veins flowed the blood of the Butterfly-Boned Clan. The blood of the majority of them possessed 0 effects, and were no different than ordinary cultivators. However, there were also a very small number of those who'd show signs of returning to their ancestral ways. The blood and flesh of those people weren't as strong in effect as their ancestors had been during the Honghuang period, but they could still greatly enhance a cultivator's ability. These people were called Butterfly-Boned Beauty Feasts, and this feast had 2 meanings. A feast in bed, or a feast of the flesh, meaning they could be placed by the pillow side to be mated or eaten directly. Whether it was the former or the latter was entirely dependent on the buyer. Someone of the butterfly-boned clan with ancestral characteristics weren't seen as human in the cultivation world. Even though they were no different from ordinary people, out of personal greed, the cultivation world had deemed them to be merchandise. Thus, while selling butterfly-boned beauty feasts was a horrifying ordeal, it did not violate any taboos. It's just, a just and dignified zhongshi like Chuaning didn't look pleased at the least. This butterfly-boned beauty feast was not obtained by Gu Yueye. This is an entrusted sale. Thus, the Xuanyuan Pavilion will be taking 30% of the agreed transaction payment as commission. Will the honored Xianjuns keep a clear account when bidding, and bid within your ability? Once the second pavilion master had spoken, she snapped her fingers crisply, and the wool blanket covering the divan fell with the signal. Abrupt silence blanketed the pavilion. Everyone was staring at the body chained upon the stone divan with such focus, even breathing and heartbeats could almost be heard within the large Xuanyuan pavilion. It was a young girl of a delicate satin body, skin as white as snow. Long locks like silk draped down her naked body, and she was wrapped in only a see-through silk tulle. Her full and smooth bare body was trembling, like frozen fresh snow, dampened jade. She glowed gently under the light. 8 iron chains firmly restrained her delicate body and clanged along with her struggling, which only easily aroused the men's savage desires. Even heartbreakers who had seen endless numbers of people would admit without hesitation that this girl was a unique, fine piece of work. A supreme treasure of the highest grade, a female butterfly-boned beauty feast at her ripening age. The second pavilion master smiled, then approached to release one of the chains. Before that girl could fight back, her hand was caught as fast as lightning and raised to the air. Hanlin the sage had marked her arm with a dot of chastity cinnabar. Will everyone see clearly? She is still a virgin. A snow-white cloth was bound around the girl's mouth, and her pitiful cries muffled, and only large beads of tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes, those golden tears confirming her identity as a butterfly-boned clan who maintained ancestral traits. Some were sucking in their breaths, some were swallowing hungrily. An atmosphere such as this suddenly made Xuanyuan Pavilion not an establishment filled with cultivators, but a house squeezed full of starving wolves, with drool coming from the corner of their mouths as they greedily eyed their prey. Pah! Chuaning's cool gaze withdrew and landed on Moran. Moran's face was blanched, his nails digging into the wood. He had actually broken a corner of the windowsill with his grip. What's wrong? No, nothing. Moran inhaled deeply before he managed to calm himself and shook his head at Chuaning. I just think selling live humans like this is very disgusting. He wasn't telling the truth. His eyes quietly returned to the form of that butterfly-boned beauty feast. This woman was the #1 beauty of the cultivation world he had taken for a wife after he had titled himself emperor in the previous life. Song Chu Tong. Author's notes. Ye Wangxi. Courtesy name, none. Nickname, none. Occupation, the last disciple of Rufeng sect's first elder. To put it simply, raised by his stepfather. Social appearance, the sect leader's right-hand man, a reliable Rufeng gentleman. To put it simply, a lackey. Current favorite, the young master of Rufeng sect. Favorite food, grilled fish. Dislikes, cowards. Height, 176 centimeters. Ooh, current favorite is the young master of Rufeng sect? Ooh, okay. So, to recap chapter 80, Chuaning and Moran get settled down, and they see that Ye Wangxi and the Rufeng sect have entered, and so they're curious as to what they might be bidding for, and they're waiting around. They see the pavilion master auctioning off some items. There's love pills. There are some elixirs that Chuaning snatches up because they're sweet and they help with cultivation. And then they're waiting for Guilai to show up, but instead of that, they are presented with a butterfly-boned beauty feast, which is a actual human with spiritual energy powers that, if consumed or mated with, can help increase someone's cultivation. So of course Chuaning is completely disgusted by it, and Moran is also shocked, but not because of human rights violations. No. It's because he recognizes this poor slave as his former wife. His former wife has made her entrance. Will she fall in love with him again in this lifetime? Let's keep reading to find out. Chapter 81. This venerable one's Bu Gui. Meanwhile, in Ru Fengsek's private room on the 3rd floor, Ye Wangxi stood tall and elegant by the intricately carved ornamental wooden railing, eyebrows drawn tightly together and lips pressed into a thin line. Ye Gongzi, Elder Shu sent us here for that holy weapon. If you bid on that butterfly bone beauty feast as well, I'm afraid we won't have enough left. It's fine, I'll use my own funds. The attendants saw that Ye Wangxi had already made up his mind, so they exchanged a couple of furtive glances but said nothing else. The second pavilion master of Xuanyuan Pavilion announced crisply, "The starting bid is 10 million gold. Ladies and gentlemen, bidding is now open." 11 million, 12 million. The commotion rose alongside the soaring price. 19 million! I bid 25 million! With the bids shooting up by 6 million in one go, quite a number of cultivators sighed and sat down, shaking their heads. At this time, several silver tabs floated down from the 2nd floor booths to the action master. She collected them from the air and nimbly fanned them out in her hand, a price written on each tab. "The current highest bid." She scanned the tabs, then announced clearly, "From the Xuan booth, 35 million. 35 million? The crowd sucked in a cold breath and collectively turned to look at the Xuan booth on the 2nd floor. Lights glowed hazily from behind the gentle drifting of the silver curtains, but there was no way to see just what kind of person was sitting inside. You could buy a whole palace on here with that money. Whose bid was it? A little excessive, don't you think? To have that kind of money to throw around, gotta be from one of the 10 great sects. I wonder which one." Chuanning's eyes were closed. Hearing the price, he asked Moran, "Did you bring enough money?" "Absolutely not!" Meeting Song Chu Tong here was the last thing he'd expected to happen, and Moran only snapped out of his shock when he heard Chuaning call for him. He asked, alarmed, "What does Shizun mean to do?" "Buy her." Moran's eyes opened wide as he waved his hands frantically. "No way! Don't do it! This woman will just be a burden! Where will we even put her? We'd have to pay rent for an extra house to travel and book an extra room at night. Nope! Don't do it!" Moran's like, my ex-wife ain't worth it. "Who said anything about bringing her along? I'll just let her go after." Chuaning opened his eyes and held out his hand with a straight face. "Money." Moran clutched his money pouch. I don't have any." "I'll pay you back when we get back." "This money's for the holy weapon." "Don't you already have Jian Gui? What do you even need another for? Hand over the money." ... Moran felt a headache coming on. This Song Chu Tong, when he'd met her in the past life, she had been a disciple of Ru Fengsek, and he had been razing Ru Fengsek City to the ground. His heart had clenched at the way she looked a little like Shimei, so he spared her life. As time went on, she showed herself to be clever and docile, and her temperament was rather similar to Shimei's as well, so he eventually made her his empress. That was one of Moran's biggest regrets. Oof. Chuaning and that kind heart of his inside that cold exterior actually wanted to buy her? How could Moran possibly allow that to happen? Don't even mention 40 million gold. He wouldn't even take that woman for 4 coppers. He wouldn't even take her for free. As a matter of fact, even if they paid him 40 million, he still wouldn't take her. They were stuck in a stalemate when a tab floated down from the 3rd floor. It was gold. A buyout tab. The gold tab indicated the highest bid at Xuanyuan Pavilion. There was no price written, for the tab itself denoted 50 million gold. Once this kind of bid got put out, no one really even had the means to keep bidding anymore, thus buyout tab. The crowd was dead silent for a second before bursting into an uproar. Ru Fengsek! Ru Fengsek pulled out the buyout tab! Chuaning turned away from Moran and his deft grip on his money pouch to look outside. They were at just the right angle to see the first room on the 3rd floor. Ye Wangxi didn't care for things like concealment. He had long ago pulled aside the snow moon silk curtains meant for secrecy, and was currently standing by the carved railing with his hands clasped lightly behind his back. His expression was solemn, handsome face betraying nothing. He glanced down at the ruckus below, seemed somewhat aggravated, and turned to walk back into the private room. Moran let out a breath and said to Chuaning, "Shizun can rest easy. I live with this Ye Gongzi back at the Peach Blossom Springs, so I'm fairly acquainted with him. He's a good person. He won't do anything cruel to that butterfly bone beauty feast. Meanwhile, inside Rufeng Sec's room on the 3rd floor, Ye Wangxi sat down at the table covered with satin cloth intricately embroidered in gold and silver, and poured himself a cup of fragrant tea. Knocks sounded from the outside when he finished the tea. Ye Wangxi's voice was gentle and polite. Come in. Ye Xianjun, I've brought the butterfly bone beauty feast for your inspection. Thank you. You can go. Xuanyuan Pavilion's maid left, and there was nothing but silence in the room for a while. The butterfly-boned beauty feast knelt on the floor, bound hands and feet by spells, panic in her eyes as her whole body trembled. Her eyes shaped like peach blossoms, red at the edges from crying, looking truly pitiful. Ye Wangxi glanced at her, not a thread of impropriety in those clear, principled eyes of his, and lifted a hand to dissipate the spells. It's cold on the floor. You must be scared. Have a seat and some warm tea. ... The butterfly-boned beauty feast was still trembling, beautiful eyes wide and translucent like glass. She stayed where she was, cowering in the corner, on the floor, too scared to talk, much less move. Ye Wangxi sighed and gestured for the attendants to bring her a cloak. Please don't worry, miss. I didn't buy you for cultivation purposes. Put on the cloak first, then we can talk. You... Seeing that she was still not moving, only looking pitifully up, Ye Wangxi shook his head with an exasperated smile and got down on one knee to be eye level with her. My name is Ye Wangxi. May I ask your name? This one's name is... Song. She gave Ye Wangxi a hesitant look through teary eyes. Song Qutong. Thank you, Ye Gongzi. Downstairs, Moran was deep in thought. In the past life, Song Qutong had already been a disciple of Rufeng sect by the time he'd met her. Ye Wangxi must have saved her from the auction house back then too. Butterfly-boned beauty feasts generally weren't treated the same as regular people, but it was a different matter if they're a disciple of a major cultivation sect. Moran sighed internally. He didn't know Ye Wangxi that well, only that he was an upright, principled person, and had been second only to Chuaning in terms of strength back then. Moran had crossed swords with him once while slaughtering the 72 cities of Rufeng sect. That fierce, imposing swordsmanship and dignified posture had left a deep impression. 72 cities of Rufeng sect spread across the land, and Moran had taken them all without the slightest bit of effort. And those lords of the cities, with their run-on titles and widespread tales of might and glory, each and every one of them were as dirt beneath his boot. Save for this Ye Wangxi, and only this Ye Wangxi, the 7 cities under his command had given Moran no end of troubles. Even in the end, when the cities had fallen and that person knelt bloodied in a field of corpses, his eyes were still clear and unrelenting. The non-Gong leaders of the Rufeng sect had long since fled by then, and countless others were groveling for their lives at Moran's feet. But Ye Wangxi only knelt there with his eyes closed and brows drawn tightly together, his expression frosty. Before killing him, Moran had asked genuinely, "Will you surrender?" "I will not." Moran had smiled from where he sat on the gilded seat adorned with dragon and phoenix, meant for the master of Rufeng sect. Beneath dark lashes, his eyes swept across the throngs of people. Ordinary disciples aside, there were 6 or 7 city lords and more than a dozen generals, all of them prostrating on the dusty ground and trembling. A crow circled in the ashen-gray sky above banners the color of blood, cawing. Moran lifted a nonchalant hand. Kill them all. Before death, Ye Wangxi had said, "There is not a single man in all the 70 cities of Rufeng." Blood splattered across the air. Moran held in his arms his newest acquisition, the beautiful Song Qutong, her loveliness unparalleled, delicate body trembling nonstop at the hellish scene before her. "Don't be afraid. There's a good girl. You'll be staying with this venerable one from now on." Moran stroked her hair, smiling. "Come, tell me your name again. What did you do at Rufeng sect? I forgot what you said earlier." "This one's name is Song Qutong." Her voice was frightened. I was Ye Wangxi's maid." Ye Wangxi's maid. That's what she had told Moran back then. As for how Song Qutong, a butterfly-boned beauty feast, had been allowed into Rufeng sect, and how she had become Ye Wangxi's maid, Moran had no idea. Until today, at the Xuanyuan Pavilion after rebirth, when he finally realized it was Ye Wangxi who paid an exorbitant sum to save her from the clutches of danger. But hardly anyone knew that a large part of the reason why Ye Wangxi was finally defeated by Moran was thanks to information divulged by Song Chu-tong. The thought made Moran scowl, the loathing he felt towards Song Chu-tong growing even deeper. He must have been out of his mind to think this woman was anything like Shimei.
The last item of this auction is a masterless holy weapon.
The second pavilion master's pleasant voice interrupted Moran's thoughts.
Put up for auction on behalf of a third party.
There were always some rumors floating around before each auction session as to what kind of treasures will be up for sale. Thus, in contrast to the wild reaction to the butterfly bone beauty feast earlier, the gathered crowd of cultivators, although angsty still, actually settled down a bit. The white jade lotus bloomed once again, and the stone platform rose slowly, carrying a satin case embellished in silver with celestial bodies and elegant landscapes. The satin case was slim and intricately embroidered, and anyone in the know could tell with a single glance that the fine needlework came from the famed embroidery house of Gusu, Shanyun Pavilion. The holy weapon aside, just this case alone was worth hundreds of gold.
This holy weapon was found at the burial mound on the June Mountain. Its former master had passed, and we at Xuanyuan Pavilion have verified that it has yet to take a new master.
The second pavilion master paused before continuing.
As everyone knows, a holy weapon's name is engraved on its body. However, time has worn away the inscription on this holy weapon, and only one character remains discernible. Gui, or return.
Someone muttered, "Enough prattling! Open the box already!" Ayo, let it be. You'll get used to it. Xuanyuan Pavilion always goes at it like this. Gotta talk it up before showing us the goods. I guess. Amused by the chatter, Moran turned toward Chuaning to quip about it, only to see Chuaning's face pale as frost, his sword-straight eyebrows tight and strained as slender fingers of cold jade pressed against his temple. Startled, he hurriedly asked, "Shizun, are you okay?" Suddenly don't feel so good. Don't feel good how? Did you catch another cold? Moran scooted over and felt his forehead. Your temperature is fine. ... Chuaning shook his head without saying anything, looking all out of sorts. Unsure what else to do, Moran offered, "I'll pour you some tea." He filled a cup with steaming tea, paused, then added a bit of the just-purchased tapir fragrance dew. Sage Hanlin's medicines were renowned the world over, and Chuaning indeed seemed better after drinking the tea mixed with tapir fragrance dew, some color coming back to his face as he turned his attention back to the auction downstairs. Moran tidied up the tea set and poured him another cup. Although there is no way to know this holy weapon's true name.
Although there's no way to know this holy weapon's true name, full name, since the stars have aligned to bring it back into the world, and its inscription already contains the word Gui, Xuanyuan Pavilion has named it Gui Lai, for the time being. Someone in the crowd finally lost his patience, yelling, "Pavilion Master, you've talked it up enough. We're quite built up. Open the box and let's have a look at the holy weapon itself already." The second pavilion master answered, and smiled. "All things in due time, Xianjun. In accordance with the laws of the cultivation world, when the master of a holy weapon passes, the weapon shall be inherited by his blood heirs. Gui Lai was found at a burial mound, and we have no way of knowing its original master's identity. However, once the case is opened, all present are welcome to reach out with their spiritual energy and test the weapon. If it resonates with someone, that will mean that the person is of the original master's bloodline, and Gui Lai will naturally belong to that person, free of charge." Haha, as if something that coincidental could ever happen. The gathered cultivators burst into laughter. That's right, what are the chances? Might as well give it a try though, can't hurt. The second pavilion master beamed at the crowd and agreed crisply. "Indeed, it can't hurt to try your luck. Now then, if I can ask for your attention, we will be removing the lid." She snapped her fingers, and a pair of Gu Yueye's disciples, both young girls of around 15 or 16, approached from either side. They flew up and landed gracefully on the Lotus platform, and placed their slender jade-like hands on the satin case. Each had an intricate crystal key that they inserted carefully into the keyholes on the case. There were 2 clicks, and the case unlocked. Watching the scene before him, Moran found himself thinking back to when he had acquired Jiangui at Jincheng Lake. It was clearly said then that only one's most beloved person in the world could ever open Ever Yearning, but for some reason the brocade box had opened in Chu Waning's hands. The audience held their breath, countless eyes staring from underneath hooded cloaks at that narrow box. The gold-embroidered lid opened slowly as the very air in the room strained with tension like a bow pulled to the limit. And despite the thousands of people present, it was so quiet that even the sound of a single hair falling to the ground could be heard. Every single person was staring unblinkingly at the ancient blade revealed inside the box, aged by time. Some greedily, some curiously, some appreciatively. Only Moran's eyes flew wide open the instant he saw the weapon lying in the box, all color draining rapidly from his face. He had lived 2 lifetimes, owned 2 holy weapons, and crossed blades with over a dozen other wielders of holy weapons. He had thought that he wouldn't care for whatever holy weapon the Xuanyuan Pavilion was selling. But he was wrong.
Holy weapon Guilai.
The second pavilion master's crisp voice shattered the silence.
A long blade, 4 feet in length, 3 inches in width, scabbardless, with a body of pure black that does not reflect.
Moran's fingertips trembled minutely as 2 words slipped past his lips. Bugui. No return. No return. Affairs of the past upon Vermilion Bridge in Emerald Green. Another year goes, but still you do not return. Moran, now that you have your own holy weapon, why do you ask me to seal its spiritual cognizance rather than give it a name?
To answer Shizun, this disciple is uncultured, and there's only one chance to name it. I worry that I'll pick a bad name and be stuck with it. Aran, have you still not decided on a name for your long blade yet? Surely you can't just keep calling it blade this, blade that.
It's fine. I'm just taking my time thinking about it. It's a holy weapon after all. It deserves a super awesome name. Ha ha ha. Then, Shimei had died. Moran went to Chuaning to release the seal so that he could name his holy weapon Mingjing. But at that time, Chuaning had said that his spiritual energy was still corrupted from the fight against the ghost realm, and he truly did not have the strength to release the sealing spell, so he could only leave it at that. Later, Moran and Chuaning completely severed relations, and Moran was loath to ask him about the unsealing anymore. And so, the bloodstained long blade remained nameless through all those years and countless battles. But it no longer mattered. Not a soul in the world was unaware of Mo Wei Yu and the hellish blade in his hand that fed on blood and hatred. In the end, Chuaning died as well, and the name-sealing spell that had been on Moran's blade for more than a decade disappeared with him. That night, Moran downed copious amounts of pure blossom wine. A bit tipsy, he ran his hand along the ice-cold body of the blade, no longer able to tell if what he felt was ecstasy or sorrow. He flicked it and listened to the reverberations from within, like the sound of drums and horns on the battlefield, like a haitang chill to the bone. He lay on the roof of Wushan Palace, laughing uncontrollably, from delighted to deranged. He couldn't remember if he had shed any tears that night, only that, when he woke in the morning, the long blade that had gone nameless for over a decade had been engraved with 2 clear-cut characters. Bu Gui. You will never return. Ever again. But why did the weapon that had accompanied him throughout countless battles in the last lifetime appear in this reborn world? And how did it end up at Xuanyuan Pavilion's auction? Before Moran could think on it further, all the thousands of cultivators at the auction house released streams of spiritual energies, each rushing to commune with Bugui. Moran, ... There's no use. Since it was Bugui, and since Moran was here, there definitely wouldn't be another person in the world who could command this long blade. But did its appearance have something to do with that little bastard hiding behind the scenes? If so, then for him to release Bugui into the world at this time meant that he knew that Moran and Chuaning were trying to track him down, and that his goal wasn't to test for other spiritual essences. Then, what was he trying to do? And also, was this Bugui real? Or was it merely bait, like those fakes at Jincheng Lake? Mind filled with questions, Moran reached out with a tendril of his own spiritual energy. If Bugui wasn't a fake, then it will surely resonate with him. The resonance can't be too obvious to avoid notice, so just a little bit. He had only just released the tiniest thread of spiritual energy when a faint groan came from behind him. Shizun! Moran whipped his head around to find Chuaning collapsed at the table, brows locked and lips blue,
snow white robes spread out like smoke, his handsome face paler than frost. He had actually passed out, eyes screwed shut like some chronic illness was flaring up. Moran never would have expected something like this to happen out of the blue. He panicked, pulling back his spiritual energy and running to Chuaning's side, cradling him in his arms. Shizun, what's wrong? End of chapter 81. So, to recap chapter 81, they finally bring out... Oh, so Ye Wangxi manages to place the highest bid for Song Chutong, and Moran is like, good riddance. And poor Ye Wangxi doesn't know that Song Chutong is the one that actually betrayed the Rufeng sect, which allowed Moran to defeat them and take over. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. I don't think Moran has any intention of becoming Ta Xianjun again in this lifetime. But after that happens and that's all out of the way, the finally coveted masterless blade is presented to the audience. And Moran is shocked because it's actually his blade from his last lifetime, Bugui. He's like, what is it doing here? This must have been placed by that person who is trying to attack me and Chuaning. So this person definitely knows Moran from his last lifetime. How would he know about this? What is Moran gonna do? Is he gonna try to get his blade back? Or is he gonna just keep his his whip? He already has a spiritual holy weapon. Does he need another one? But he's been through a lot with that weapon, so I'm pretty sure he wants his sword back. But he's a little distracted right now because, unfortunately, Chuaning isn't feeling so well. He passed out. What happened? Why is Chuaning not feeling well? Is it perhaps because he's using too much of his spiritual energy? And the pills that he used to stay in his adult form is wearing off? Is he gonna turn back into Shasuni soon? Is Moran gonna find out? So many unanswered questions, guys. But that's all for today, so we're gonna have to find out next time. I hope you guys enjoyed today's read-along, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!